Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar, which is the third in a series on AI that you do not have to have joined the other ones. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes for people to join. We'll start about 2 minutes past, but just to say you are in the right place if you're talking about why tech must get AI right. Right, I think we will make a start. Welcome everybody to our webinar, Pledge or Perish, Why Tech Must Get AI Right. My name is Katie Thorne, I'm the digital lead at the Digital Care Hub, and I'm just going to run through some of the housekeeping before passing over to our panel of amazing speakers here today to talk about the work that they have been doing all around responsible artificial intelligence. So just your basic housekeeping things, this webinar is being recorded. All attendees are on mute and we can't see you, I'm afraid. So if you do have any questions, please do use the Q&A function. You can find that at the bottom of your screen if you're on desktop, or by clicking on the little 3 dots and then more if you're on mobile, so that you can bring it up. Please do feel free to introduce yourself in the chat there or have a conversation. There's been some really good connections which have been made during these webinars, so always lovely to say hi, where you're from. And then we will be sharing a recording and access to all presentation slides after this session as well. And any references that we make to a variety of different links and reports, we will make sure those are sent to you. If you would prefer to see this recording with transcription or with closed captions, Zoom will auto enable those for you. So please do feel free as an attendee to switch those on. We have quite an agenda today, so we'll do a bit of an introduction between myself and Daniel, who I'll ask to introduce himself in a moment. Then we'll be passing on to John to talk about the development of the technology pledge and what that means. Then to Charles and Jackie, both to talk about sort of what the technology tech pledge means to them, how it's been actualized in real life and working together. And then we'll have a little bit about next steps and lots of time at the end for questions. So please do put your questions through. We might not do it sort of in the middle of somebody talking, but we'll definitely make time at the end for any questions which are coming through. And I mentioned this is part of a series. This is the third one. So the first 2, the recordings are available on YouTube and we will send it out to you afterwards. And our final session after this one, which is on Green Code, Clean Conscience, tackling AI's environmental impact for the care sector, will be on the 23rd of October. So we'll have a whole new panel of speakers for that one and a slightly different topic, but please do sign up if you are interested. For any of you who aren't aware of who we are at Digital Care Hub, we're an organisation who provides free support to care provider organisations across the country on anything to do with tech, data protection, cybersecurity, and increasingly doing a lot of work on AI. And so with that, I will pass to my colleague Daniel Casson to introduce himself and also to introduce the project that all of us have been working on for, gosh, I think the last 2 years or so, Daniel, is that right?
Yeah, thanks, Katie. What a great introduction. So thank you, everyone, for coming today. I'm Daniel. I'm an independent consultant in innovation and digital transformation in social care. And about 2 years ago, Katie, the Digital Care Hub, and Caroline Green of the Oxford Institute for Ethics in AI got together and said, we know AI is coming. We want to be at the forefront of it, but it has to be done with people in mind, for the benefit of people, so who are going to benefit from the new technology. And we've also learned over the past roughly 7 to 10 years of how innovation has been implemented in care and has sometimes run away from the people who are to benefit from it. So we had the chance here with the Oxford project on the responsible use of generative AI in social care to make sure that we use AI to the benefit of people. Now, but that then needs a whole range of people to be involved, because the co-production is at the heart of what we do. So we gathered together, Katie, Caroline and I, groups of people with lived experience, people who draw on care and support. We drew in care workers, with care providers, commissioners of care, And something that I'm very interested in here, and that's the people that we've got on today, is how the technology experts, the technology suppliers who work in social care can actually show us what the future can be, the potential for what we do, and work with all those people, the care workers, the care providers, and the people who draw on care and support to make sure it's for their benefit. Can we go on to that? So we actually came up with this definition of the responsible use of generative AI in social care, because we know it's essential to how we progress. Can I go to the next slide, please, Eleanor? So our first speaker today is John Boyle, and I'll let John introduce himself. I just want to say that he's been at the heart of what we're doing in care at the moment. And so, John, would you please introduce yourself, and then we'll pass on to the other speakers, because I think you're at the heart of the tech suppliers pledge of how we're getting your expertise to providers and to care workers and to people who draw on care and support. John, over to you.
Thank you, Daniel. So my name is John Boyle. I have 37 years of experience of delivering case management and finance systems into local authorities. About 80 local authorities use the software that developed with my company, originally OCC, which is now part of the System C group. And so I've seen all the challenges that tech suppliers face in delivering successfully technology into the social care and indeed the health sector. So I was very keen to work with this group to try and facilitate the adoption of AI technologies so that we could help to improve the services that tech companies deliver. So I've got a few slides I'm going to use, so just give me a second whilst I navigate the challenges of sharing my screen successfully. I think that's my screen shared successfully. Can somebody confirm my screen can be seen?
Yes, you can see that.
Good. Okay, great. So the first question is, why did we want to produce a pledge in the first place? And so what I'm going to explain is the reasons behind the pledge. And the first thing is because there is no legislative background in the UK for the adoption of AI in social care. There's some guidance, and unlike the EU, which has specific legislation, the UK does not. So the space was less formally defined than for the mainland Europe. And so we wanted to provide a framework that would work specifically for social care. And social care has some unique challenges. That means you want to develop a pledge specific to that domain. Some of the examples being things like consent, dignity, and safeguarding. The interesting thing was to do this with the AI Institute. In other words, to develop a pledge that aligns with ethical best practice. And for us as technology providers, that was a new experience, to work directly with ethics experts to make sure the pledge aligns with ethical frameworks. And of course, underlying everything we're trying to do is to make sure that the new technologies that come in protect individuals and that we can maintain public trust. It's very important to explain that what we're doing sits on top of existing regulations. So fundamental to everything we do as tech providers are things like the Data Protection Act and GDPR. The Ethics Pledge sits on top of those frameworks. What have we produced? We've produced a number of papers that we think might be helpful for yourselves going forwards. So first of all, we're very keen to emphasize benefits as well as risks. So we produced a paper that looks at what the benefits are that we can deliver within using generative AI within social care space. And then having looked at those risks, we've produced a pledge that tech providers can sign up to show how they address each of the risks we've identified. But having a pledge is one thing. We also want tech providers to demonstrate their compliance with the pledge. So we've produced an evaluation framework. How will the work we've done become successful? My experience as a software provider is we need the work we're doing to be adopted by commissioners and local authorities. In the end, as tech providers, we are bidding for work, and we will work within the constraints of the tenders we're given. So we would like the basis of this pledge to be integrated into the tenders that commissioners and local authorities produce for software providers. And then by having a common framework, it means that we're comfortable that commissioners are giving us things that we understand, and it means that not everyone is reinventing the questions and the requirements around an ethical approach to generative AI. But we also need for commissioners and local authorities to adopt what we're doing. we need key organizations to say, yeah, we think this is good. We endorse what's behind this. So we need Department of Health and Social Care, Digital Care Hub, and other organizations to say, yes, this is something that is well developed. And finally, we need the stakeholder bodies to endorse the work we've done. So the pledge is for good practice for the technology providers. It gives us all a common framework to work with. It's also for AI users, a whole range of stakeholders, because the reality is most AI users don't understand how the technology works. So they need to have confidence that we have understood the risks and addressed them. The enablers, so policymakers, regulators, and so on, they also need a framework to work with. And then, as I've mentioned, local authorities as part of their procurement process. Some of the unique challenges that we face in social care and are particularly difficult to handle are things like informed consent, because of course many of the users are not in a position to give informed consent. So we need to have a specific way of using the pledge to say that we have reviewed the issues and that we are committing, if you like, to an ethical approach, and that will give people confidence in giving their consent. And then, of course, it's a domain that's complex with multiple stakeholders. We work across health, government, local authorities, and systems are integrated. So there's a lot of complexity in this domain that we need to address, again, with how we deploy the technology. We're very keen in the work we've done and the papers we've produced to emphasize the benefits. It's very easy to get hung up on the risks, but we wouldn't be talking about all of this if the benefits weren't so enormous. So the benefits are really valuable and the risks are there to mitigate the dangers of the technology. The main way in which, let me just shut my door, I'm very sorry. The main way in which the technology is already being used across many local authorities is in producing personalized care plans. So it's what's called the third person in the room. So the generative AI system is listening to the consultation between the social worker and the person in receipt of care and creating a care plan summary. And this is being used quite widely now. It's also being used quite widely in healthcare by GPs to produce patient notes. It's a really successful and valuable way of using AI technologies. It's also being used to address the problem of funds. We know the financial pressures everyone's under. So it's not just about producing better plans, it's also about improving the efficiency of producing those plans. Those are the two main benefits, that we see being realized already. The risks, there are many risks. We've looked at them in detail in the papers we've produced, but I want to just talk about a couple of them. One, which is a real concern, which is skill degradation in the workforce. How do we ensure that people don't become dependent on these tools and lose the skills to make the human judgment? We've seen this in other areas of technology. The calculator is the classic example. How many people can still do mental arithmetic when their calculator is not available? Not many. So there's a real danger in skill degradation, and we need to address that in everything we do. And one of the ways we do that, one of the safeguards we put in, is human oversight. So we're very clear to emphasize that AI is a decision support tool. It is the role of the worker, the social worker, to review what the system has produced and to approve or modify that output before it becomes part of a plan. So human oversight is at the heart of everything that we do on managing the risks. We want to balance the risks against effectively the benefits. So, technology adoption involves trade-offs. It's been very interesting for us working with some stakeholder groups who find the concept of trade-offs really difficult. But the reality is there is always a trade-off when you adopt technology. So we need to demonstrate that the benefits outweigh the risks and that the risks have been mitigated as well as possible. And as a technology supplier, sometimes we get a bit frustrated. We would like the technology to be compared to realistic alternatives and not to the almighty, if you like. So there's a challenge for us is we can demonstrate lots of benefits, but sometimes we're asked to reach a level of, can you guarantee that nothing can go wrong? Of course we can't. Can you guarantee that you've addressed the risks? We can guarantee that. We also believe it's important to build domain solutions. What we're seeing in AI increasingly is solutions are being built for specific domains, social care, healthcare, benefits management, and so on. These general purpose AI solutions are not appropriate for that. So we're building domain small scale solutions. We're very keen, and as a tech provider, I've seen this for many years, is the danger is the more regulations you put in, health and safety, quality and diversity, all these regulations come in, and what they are is they're a barrier to incumbents. They prevent small innovative companies from being able to promote their solutions because there are so many, if you like, so many regulations that need to be complied with. So we're very careful to produce the regulations in a way that can still be used by small organizations. So the pledge we produced has a number of elements, but its main element is it's a commitment on the behalf of tech providers to integrity, responsibility, and collaboration with stakeholder groups. And it's our ability to demonstrate that we've rigorously managed the risks. But a pledge, like any other piece of legislation, must evolve. So we have a commitment to reviewing the work we've done. The technology is changing at such a pace that the regulations we have need to be evolved the whole time. And it's about building trust. So it's about having this sort of communication with groups like yourself so that we share what we're doing, that we continuously get feedback, so that everyone feels part of this process and not something that's just thrust upon them by technology providers. There are a number of core commitments to the pledge. I'm not going through them all now, but essentially there is a commitment linked to each risk. So for each major risk we've identified, we've also created a matching commitment. Perhaps one of the most interesting ones for tech providers is this concept of responsible development. In other words, we seek evidence that the new technologies that we are deploying provide improved outcomes or we cease use. And this is a very important part of the ethical framework in which we work. So the final piece of work we've done is this evaluation framework. So as I said, we produced the tech pledge, which addresses the risks. And we've also produced an annual statement so that tech providers can confirm that they are compliant with the tech pledge. It has a number of levels. So at the simplest level, we ask providers just to confirm that they meet each element of the pledge through a tick box. But we also ask providers to give evidence of their compliance. And again, we think this is something commissioners can use directly rather than creating separate tender documents and requirements in tenders. This is already available. It's a standard that's been well researched. So we think this can be used to avoid and create extra administration and complexity for small providers by having this standard approach to ethical compliance with this generative AI. So what's going to make all of this work? I just want to emphasize this. We need it adopted by commissioners and local authorities. We need your support. We need stakeholder endorsement. We've got some of that already now. We need a wide range of providers to endorse it. We've got that. We've got large providers from the Access Group right down through to lots of small specialist providers. And we need to show that we're continuously updating the work we do. And all this information was shared through the Institute for Ethics in AI. And so finally, these are the references to the 3 major documents we've produced, which I believe are available to be shared with you if you'd like to look at our work in a bit more detail. But that's an overview of the pledge, why we developed it and how we're using it going forwards. Thank you.
John, that's fantastic start. Thank you very much. And all the documents, we'll give you references to those near the end. So John, you've really set the scene for the responsible use of AI, and your experience comes through there. Thank you. So there may well be questions after. So please do have questions for John prepared. And what John referred to there was actually people using this technology and learning lessons of how we've been innovating care. And I'd like to introduce you to our next speaker, Charles Cross, who epitomizes the can-do attitude among people in social care, that we're actually, some people say we're actually ahead of healthcare in so many ways because we're more agile and flexible. And I need to say no more, but just introduce Charles to introduce himself and tell you how he's turning ambition into action. Charles.
Yeah, thanks so much, Daniel. As you said, I'm Charles Cross, one of the co-founders here at Emma AI with my co-founder, George Parry. My background, just to give you some context, is I spent 8 years owning and operating care services. So when we speak about co-production, that's essential when we first started the vision of Emma and bringing AI into social care. And that was really the start of it. And George comes from an AI researcher background. And together, when we first saw the initial foundational models, it was a penny drop moment for us that this technology is going to be extremely transformational for every care service. I think we saw digital and the impact of digital. It took us some years to adopt that, but then now you're looking at over an 80% adoption rate, with many of the 20% being smaller care providers who haven't yet adopted. And if I take you back to the founding of Emma and when we launched our first generative AI product in November 2023, seems like a long time ago, and it's definitely a long time when you're talking about artificial intelligence. And back in those days, you would definitely have increased issues when it comes to accuracy, reliability, and also context window, which was, and just to explain what a context window is, how much data AI can actually analyze at any given time. And there was more and more constraints. And I think one of the things around the tech pledge is how do we practically evaluate different technology solutions over time? And as this foundational models and the technology improves over time, how must our technology then adapt to that? And also care providers ensuring that they can safely and ethically actually adopt this technology. The benefits of generative AI are huge. We see within our existing partners with national care organizations that the benefits are definitely there. Now, the question is, how do we use them safely? Co-production is an important part, especially within the design elements of our technology, working so closely from the very start with both our existing care providers and frontline care teams. George has gone out and reviewed and shadowed assessments. I've gone out on care visits and care assessments, and it's really important to actually see firsthand and make sure your technology provider is actually seeing the workflows of the frontline care team and actually understanding their problems. I think for so long, we had tech suppliers producing problems or solutions to problems that maybe weren't there or were very different when it comes to the practical use of this. One of the key things that we have within our technology is C-sources. So how do you give people visibility and transparency over what AI produces? I think one of the biggest benefits, and we've already heard from John around care planning, for example, if AI is going to take a substantial amount of the work away from us, we need to have really advanced ways to scrutinize how the AI has got to its answer. One way that we do it through many different ways, but one way is C-sources. You've got to be able to verify and click into whatever the context is, or as John said in the consultation, to ensure that we have that human oversight. Below every single form or generation as well, we have an ability for the human to be able to tick and confirm that they've actually fact-checked it. Again, if the AI is going to be doing so much more work for us, how can we put the safeguards in place? Really, really important. The work that we've done over the last few years now with the Oxford project has been phenomenal. I think one of the really big advantages of some of the work with Katie and Daniel and their colleagues is bringing together so many voices. I think that was really when we went to the conference and we met everyone from tech suppliers, as Daniel said, to people with lived experience. I think everyone was excited for the future, but wanted it done in a responsible way. We're actually taking this one step further as well. And here at Emma, we're actually working with Northeastern University around our own evaluation framework. When you're using AI, and we've already heard about AI and biases and accuracy and recall, we need a way to be able to evaluate this. And every tech supplier needs to do this in order to give people the confidence that they can actually adopt this technology. The Oxford project is a really important step in terms of a framework, and we're completely behind local authorities, care providers within their own DPIAs, within their own data protection processes to be implementing the Oxford project's work and our pledge. When it comes to evaluating AI, and especially AI in care, there's a few different elements that we need to be evaluating. One would be, for example, context relevant. How relevant is the AI answer to what you've actually asked it to do, for example. Really important in the retrieval of information. Maybe that's from that care consultation through to completing a care plan, risk assessment, etc. Another one is context recall, whether all of the information that you've given the AI, can it recall it, especially at scale? And this is what we're seeing with care providers. I think one of the biggest unlocks, and I'll come on to this, is 92% of data in social care is natural language. It's language data. And we're sitting on this hidden data set that we're yet to unlock. We've all moved from paper to digital, and we might have analytics products that can pull some of the numeric data and some of our KPIs. That only actually equates to 8% of the data that sits within our digital social care record platform, or essentially within our organization. And that is in the NHS report, and I can send you the reference for that later on. Another key area that we need to be evaluating is the faithfulness, and that's whether the generated answer is factually consistent. It's another really key element when we're actually evaluating AI and giving people that trust and confidence. And then the answer relevancy. So that final version of the answer, and this parlays into a lot of the work that we're doing with Northeastern University around how can we continue to train models over time, and as users actually use artificial intelligence, how can it improve with them, dependent on maybe some of the adjustments from when they complete a form through to when they finally submit it. As John also said, all of the same data security, compliance and regulation is consistent, and we must know that. So both GDPR, ISO 27001, these are all extremely relevant. Zero data retention policies with any foundational models, really important to have all of those. And when you're looking at a new tech supplier, especially with artificial intelligence, they must be ticking all of these boxes just as a foundation. And I believe that the Oxford project and what we're doing here with the pledge is that next step, and is bringing that generalized regulation and saying specifically for AI and specifically for social care, this is what more that we expect from technology providers. And this is an important journey that we're going on. And then I said around 92% of social care data is natural language. How do we unlock it? What we do here at Emma is we actually analyze, using artificial intelligence, all of your data in real time, flagging insights. And then from those insights, you can actually get CQC ready evidence coming off the back of it. And why do we do that? And this is really comes down to how AI can change social care. We've been speaking with many providers, many partners, and they might be auditing or analyzing 10% of visits that happen, 10% of handovers that occur, 10% of staff shifts when they're delivering care, or 25% or 50%. But social care fundamentally does not have the resource to be analyzing and reviewing, especially when you go back 1 month, 3 months, or 6 months of care delivery. We don't have the ability to sit there and read that, or else I think we'd be all reading into the nighttime. So it's how do we allow artificial intelligence to do that, flag those concerns, and you can, across 100% of care that's delivered, and then give you those actionable insights, not from numbers, but from language. And that is a really key unlock that artificial intelligence can give. And I do a lot of discussions, and as you can probably imagine, on return on investments. And return on investment is such a fundamental aspect to care providers adopting this. And actualization only comes when people are willing to invest, able to invest, and they need the evidence. And when you look at the different workflows that care organizations go through, both from initially assessing someone's care, and John touched on that, through to reviewing someone's care, reviewing the last 6 months worth of care delivery, through to auditing someone's care notes, through to auditing someone's medication administration. These are all workflows that are very common across most, if not all, social care organizations. And provider information returns, with the CQC being another one. How can we use this hidden data set to be able to unlock those insights in real time and provide people, and ensuring that people are only spending their precious time? And I think if you ask anyone in social care, we're all time strapped. how much of the time are we actually spending on actionable insights, things that actually we need to do something from? So if someone has a pressure sore and it's being developed and it's getting much worse, how do we then respond to that? Where is it being identified? Where is it being highlighted? And then how can we inform the next carer as well that they need to potentially roll the person, or there might be behavioral escalation because someone's been out in the community all day. And then how can we ensure that the next person that visits that individual is given with the right data, the right insights, so that they can adapt their care? And I've spoken before around care needs to adapt to the person and not our review date. I think so much in care, we've had set processes that we will review someone every month, every 3 months, every 6 months. And at that point, we might change the care that's being delivered. But what artificial intelligence really allows us to do is someone visits in the morning, and by the lunchtime or evening shift or the night shift, the same day, the care has changed because that person has changed. How many times do we get up and maybe we don't feel like it today, or something's happened within your day and you say, no, I just want to go to bed. Well, that care plan that was done 3 months ago or 6 months ago isn't going to be appropriate for me today, because like anyone, I fluctuate. And I think those fluctuations, those nuances can really be uncovered and then crucially can be acted upon. And that comes back to the feedback loop. And allowing artificial intelligence to help with that feedback loop. So hopefully from all of this, you can see there's just enormous benefits, especially within social care, with the way that our data is fundamentally language. And now it's about how do we pick the right providers to be able to both prove that they're doing it safely and ethically, that they're evaluating artificial intelligence in situ, and we've been in situ for over 2 years. And then beyond that, how do they then keep evolving as this technology evolves? And I think that's one of the consistent things that you see within this pledge, is it's not, okay, great, we did a wonderful conference, we got all of these people together, isn't this fantastic? We all understand the benefits of AI, but how do we move forward? And this can't just be a one-stop shop. It happened once, and we just say that, okay, we're now safe and ethical. This technology is evolving. We need to evolve with it. And the pledge is definitely one way that everyone can get involved to do that.
There's a big title.
Thank you very much, Charles. That's incredible. I mean, as I say, you're taking this into reality. This is what we really want to thank you for your support for the pledge and realizing it, because as John said, you focused in that actually these sort of initiatives are not meant to stop you innovating. They're meant to provide that framework to help you innovate responsibly. So that's what you've taken on board. So thank you very much for that. And some questions I'm sure you're going to enjoy getting your teeth into afterwards. So brilliant. Thank you, Charles. I'd like to now come on to our final presenter, Jackie Morton. And Jackie, again, has been working to actually implement new stuff specifically for people in care to help people live their best lives. Jackie, is that sort of the true way you'd put what Sentai is? And I'll let you take it from there.
Great. Yes, thank you, Daniel. And thanks, Charles and Katie and Eleanor for organising everything. So hi, everyone. I'm Jackie. I work at Sentai. We've created a digital companion for people. So essentially, we use AI in a speaker so that somebody can be reminded about their activities of daily living, like their meds reminders or meal times, etc., or when their care is coming, or if they want to have a chat for loneliness, and then share that data whilst maintaining their privacy with their carers and their loved ones and maybe their neighbours and community, anyone who helps them and keeps them safe. My role at Sentai is Head of Customer Success and Support. A very long-winded title, but essentially I have the pleasure of being able to work directly with our customers, so speak to care providers or speak to end users and their family who use Sentai. And I've been into people's homes and experienced how they use Sentai for their benefit, which is one of the most pleasurable aspects of my role. My background is digital transformation in the civil service. not around social care. I was actually working at the Forestry Commission, so something completely different about our natural environment. And I also am a business analyst as well, which is why I enjoy being involved in things like the Pledge, because I like to chat through gnarly problems and come up with solutions. And then finally, regarding my experience, I'm also somebody with lived experience. I'm the daughter-in-law of a lovely lady, my mother-in-law, who has dementia and is living in a care home, and my older parents. My dad turned 90 at the weekend, and I'm helping them with all sorts of issues. So my role in this webinar is to be less technical than Charles, which is good. Because Charles has done an exemplary job already in explaining how we can bring to action the Pledge. So I'm really going to talk about how it went, why it matters, how we all, whether we got along, and how we created the Pledge. So first of all, I'd like to say I think the Pledge doesn't matter. The Pledge really matters. And the reason being that social care involves the most vulnerable people in our society, and often at their most vulnerable moments. And technology that uses AI, etc., it's not just about convenience, it's not just about innovation, it's about their dignity, their safety, and improving their quality of life, and helping their carers, their loved ones, their neighbours, their community look after them. And that's all done by helping them, as Daniel put it, I couldn't put it better, help them live their best life. And then when they have any issues and perhaps need a little bit of help with that life, then they've got people who are made aware as quickly as possible, as Charles has already said. It's real-time data that says, your mum's not up and about today, you might want to check in with her, or she skipped lunch, you might want to find out why, because it's an important meal for her because of her meds, for example. So moving on in terms of why the Pledge is important and it matters and how it works. It's a very easy to follow Pledge. It's very sector specific. And it does clearly demonstrate under some key headings how we build our systems and how we can evaluate them. As has been mentioned, we're working on an evaluation framework. So we're just in the process at the moment of tweaking that and refining it to make sure that it's as easy to follow and use as the Pledge is. And it will give you, the audience, it will give you clear examples of how we meet the Pledge, which I believe also gives context of the AI and why the AI is in use. And then on that, the last point on that is that it is a living document. It will evolve with technology advancements, and if we get further feedback from people who would like to use it, and become a source of good practice for everybody involved in this sector. So moving on to the second part of my questions around the benefits of working together. So that there were two aspects to that. One was obviously working together as technology collaborators. So, you know, people from companies like Emma and Sentai, we were all working together, not as competitors. But that's the easy bit, really, because we can always get along, even when we're disagreeing with each other. We can always get along. So where I think it was particularly important to be working together is around the co-production, the fancy way of saying just talking to people who use our technologies, and making sure that the features we build are required, they're necessary, they're usable, and they are safe and ethical. So working in these groups, I think at the beginning, Daniel, you mentioned about the different groups and people with lived experience, etc. We had a co-production week, and we also had a separate conference. And that introduced us to lots of other people that we can be always in the future talking to, working with. If we have an ethical dilemma, we can pick up the phone and or dial on Teams and we can chat with people and get some help and advice. So An example of that is I met with somebody on the lived experience group who has trialed using Sentai, introduced me to several friends who use Sentai. And now the benefit of that is the feedback we get from them is much richer than general user feedback, and it's really led us to make some improvements to the way that we utilize AI for Sentai to be able to have a good natural conversation with the user. So an example of that is that previously we would give somebody a reminder that AI would parcel up or package up how Sentai gave that reminder. For example, I take supplements, so Sentai wakes up at 10 a.m. and says, you know, hi Jackie, it's time for you to take your supplements. Are you ready to take them? But based on the feedback we got, we realized that it had to be much more user-led. So an example of that might be the Sentai waking up to give me that reminder, but just saying, how are you? How are you doing? I'm assuming you'd still like to take your supplements. If so, now's the time to take it. And then respond off the back of my response, that the Sentai next response would be context-led. So if, for example, Sentai picked up someone else in the room or the television or the radio playing, and that wasn't in the context of the meds reminder, then that interaction would be ignored and only my response would be taken into account. And this was so much easier to implement with the key headlines of the pledge. I digress slightly with that particular section. I digressed into an example of how Sentai will how the pledge is going to help us implement ethical AI with Sentai. So I'll just close with just a final thought. So the pledge and the people that we've worked with on the pledge now informs our roadmap at Sentai and the features that we're building. The relationships that we've built means that we're not solving these challenges alone. And last but not least, getting it right in social care is far too important for us to work in isolation.
Thank you, Jackie. And it's really, what you said there again emphasizes one of the points I made with Charles, is that this isn't constricting you. This is actually opening you up to new people and getting it right. They're not necessarily getting it right first time, but actually working with the right people to hone it. And that's the journey we're on with the Tech Pledge. Because one of the things is that it's not meant to replace regulatory the regulation in place. It's meant to enhance them and involve people in how these guidelines develop. So it will feed in, as John said, to how local authorities work. And we're working very closely with the Department of Health and Social Care as they develop standards in care. And this is part of not making some of the mistakes that were made in digital innovation transformation in the care sector in the past 4 or 5 years, is that we're bringing people along slowly and together. And so we're working with all of them. So I think that's Jackie,
and the evaluation as well. I think the evaluation framework will be very important as well, because it will give us a structured response. If as John says, we speak to care providers and local authorities, and they should be saying to us, how do you meet the pledge? Then our response can be the same as Charles's response and Access response and Nourish response. And so commissioners and care providers are able to understand how we meet the pledge based on the demonstration of our features.
Brilliant. And Katie, thank you, Jackie. And Katie, I think it's time now to come to the Q&A, and some really good questions. I noticed there's one in the chat. Mel Judge put one in the chat as well, which is a question specifically for Charles. But Katie, would you want to start to look at the Q&A?
Yes, I will start going through the questions. Thank you all. Yeah, actually, if we start for the one, so there's a specific comment on Sentai, which somebody said, does it just music sounds like HAL from 2001? So, which I thought was quite fun. But then for Emma, does Emma integrate with existing systems and digital social care records?
The short answer is yes, but please do get in touch. We can review which digital social care record system you use. I think this is a really important discussion that needs a wider discussion on technology companies and their ability to have interoperability. I think this is something that we've discussed many times. I've discussed since founding Emma and previously within my role as a care organization. This is something that, who does the data belong to? It belongs to the individuals we support, the service users, the patients, clients, however you call them, this is their data. And we need to be ensuring that our technology providers are not withholding these. If you look at something, for example, let's just take an analogy, banking, right? Banking, we have really sensitive data, but when you go to pay someone, you now have the ability to verify, yes, I'm paying the right person. How is there no system within social care that we have that verifiability, we can verify across systems, whether it's from hospital to home, hospital to social care, health to social care, or even across social care platforms and technology platforms? We should be able to verify, and people are already given consent for us to work with multidisciplinary teams right across both the social care, but if you think about physiotherapists, occupational therapists, district nurses, these are all people within the family of care and the care and support that's being provided. And what I have experienced is some technology providers believing that their technology moat is people's care data and they make it as hard as possible. I think it's really abhorrent, actually, when you look at some of the opinions and stances that technology suppliers take. We're completely the other end of the spectrum. We want you to be able to have access to your information. We want to be able to work across your technology stack. We already do that with some of our existing partners. It's a fundamental pillar of what we do, is bringing together systems and ensuring that we can put in those integrations. But I would say to everyone on this call that it's really important that when you're working with a technology supplier, you really go under the hood of, okay, can you actually be interoperable with other systems, and scrutinize that? Because I've also heard that people would say that thing to then work with someone, and then they're stuck with a system for multi-years, and then that doesn't actually transpire. So I think the whole culture needs to shift, because it's really important. If we've got the person's best interests at heart, then they're the person that we're focused on. How do we provide the best possible care? Well, in the first instance, we all need to be working off the single source of truth. And I've, in my former days, worked in both, I was an innovation fellow at the local MSc ICS, and also discharged over 4,000 people from the MSc hospitals. And within that process, you find that it takes so many people across health and social care to be able to provide a really efficient, but also a person-centered discharge pathway. And how do we bring those teams together? So not just from a service level perspective, but also from a data perspective. And that does require interoperability. And I think that culture needs to change in technology, and hopefully we're doing a small part in that.
Thanks, Charles. Really, really helpful answer. One, I think potentially for Daniel, this one, have ADAS been asked to support the pledge?
Yes, we are in touch. We are in touch very much with ADAS and with the LGA. And just echoing what John said at the beginning, we want this to become their standards, and so we're continually talking to them. They're not official partners of the Oxford Initiative, but they're very, very closely involved, and were at the presence at most of the initial conferences we had. And so yeah, there's a very big presence there. So more and more we're talking to them, but they're still getting their act together as well. So we're all developing at the same time. So it's a really apposite question. So thank you, Katie.
Thank you. So this is one probably for all of the panel to give their opinion on. It's interesting. I'm at a conference currently. We were just talking about this. So in June, NHS England put out a piece of guidance to all, and staff were told to immediately stop using ambient voice technology, which provides summaries of health records directly back into the EPR, because unless they're regulated as a Class 1 medical device by MHRA. There is a link to a BMJ article about it as well in the question, if anyone didn't see this. The question for the panel, though, is do you think there should be a similar standardized registration process for social care, or because obviously medical device regulation is a complex area, so I don't know who would like to tackle that question first.
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, go for it, Charles.
Should there be standards for ambient voice detection? Yes, but if nothing else, this pledge is part of that, right? This is the whole purpose of this pledge, is exactly to do that, is to set out this framework. So I think it's really important that we sign up to the pledge, everyone gets on board the pledge, and we actually put this into practice. And I think that's a really key part. I do also see a lot of times that technology companies are using this without the zero data retention policies in place, potentially not with the data security required for social care. And also, I think there was a question on bias and whatnot. And I think there is some issues that if something hasn't been made for social care and it's just a generic, and John touched on this, generic solutions, they can actually be quite dangerous because of the level of clinical information that we're handling is obviously disproportionately higher, and therefore safeguards need to put in place. And those safeguards also change over time as this technology changes over time. So it's really important, not only do you use a specific social care technology, but also that technology provider is someone who is changing as this baseline artificial intelligence improves. So I'm in favor of this framework as the vehicle in order to solve this problem. And I think as many people as possible should be signing up to it.
Yep, exactly, Charles. That's definitely where we are. Yeah, I think social care is an interesting position because obviously there's the general position with social care is there are lower barriers to entry to social care innovation than there are in the NHS, and that's a great point because it encourages innovation, but it also opens us up to needing more voluntary, and we do stress this is a coalition of the voluntary, a coalition of the willing, really, to quote Keir Starmer, that we're getting together to make sure that people work together. So it's an ongoing situation now. So no definitive answer there, but this is we call upon providers to create that trust and responsibility among them.
And Daniel, just to add, if I can, Katie, it's a
course.
really interesting point of who does the responsibility lie with? I think the Oxford framework and what we're doing here with the pledge is the responsibility of the technology provider, but it is also incumbent, like you would with any other technology or digital solution, for each care provider to have their own due diligence on what that looks like. Now, you might say, well, artificial intelligence is a really advanced area of technology, which it is. It can often mean different things in different use cases, and we've also seen that. But I think this is the way that the technology providers can be responsible for the safe and ethical use of AI. And then it's also incumbent on the care provider as well, where they can, when they're reviewing different technology.
Yeah, thank you. And that actually leads us on to a question which I think has come from a care provider really nicely. So excellent segue there, Charles. Thank you. Which is, we'll take the second half of that question first because I think it's quite quick. So are there any costs to care providers to sign the pledge?
No, apart from commitment to help us develop it, really. So we want that people's input. We don't want people to be passively looking at it. It's a developing piece of work. So there is no cost.
Yeah, and if it was a care home or a home care organisation, this is more about the governance side question. So they're asking, should contract clauses be developed, or are GDPR clauses likely to cover what's needed if you're talking about a contract with a company using AI? Or could they have a clause that requires providers to sign up to the tech pledge, so their software suppliers to sign up?
That would be an ideal. I mean, I'll go to, for me, that would be an ideal. Yeah, we want that greater credibility, that increasing credibility to create that greater coalition of the willing. But Jackie and Charles, for you to come in here, how does that sound to you?
Yes, I would agree with that. I think it already sits alongside when we are talking with a care provider or local authority and talking about a contract or an agreement. Then we have our data processing agreement and privacy policy, and the pledge that we've signed up for is also sits alongside that already, that we can refer to it in terms of. To be honest, it's covered with a demonstration of Sentai when we're able to talk about the features and how the features are driven by AI and what the guardrails are.
And so are the current GDPR regulations sufficient? I think that's one of the bases of the question.
They're possibly not, but that's a larger task, isn't it? To look at, because I mean, I think for expediency already, they became UK GDPR rather than GDPR because we left Europe, but weren't changed. So I think that change will be much slower, which is why the pledge was necessary, because that legislation isn't coming through quickly.
And just to add on to that one, if you are a care provider organisation, so care home care supported living, and you want support with sort of an AI policy, we do also, as part of the broader Oxford work, have developed templates for that, which are also available on the Digital Care Hub website. So we will share those with people if you want some specific advice around GDPR, data protection side of things. Sorry, I'm doing a terrible, I meant to just be asking questions and not providing feedback. I'm rubbish at that, sorry. We're running, I'm very conscious of time, so I'm actually going to combine these two questions because I think they're kind of getting to the same point. They're very interesting though. So there recently has been some research which has come out of London School of Economics from the Centre for Care Evaluation and Policy, which suggests that AI summaries may disadvantage women in particular in the research that they're doing. And how the question is really, well, both questions is how can we make sure that technology isn't baking in unfairness by people not being represented in specific groups of data sets, for example, and how should we be thinking about managing risk and safeguarding when using AI care settings?
I wonder. I mean, we know that's one of the things we hope we've learned the lessons. I mean, I go back to various, I mean, not so technical stuff like the creation of the seatbelt, for example, where it was obvious that women weren't originally included in the production of that, in the co-production of that. So we're trying to get over those issues with this co-production. But yes, there are biases in there, and we have to be careful about that. I mean, Charles and Jackie, I think it's really, on the ground, how do you combat that sort of? That's something, Jackie, I see your physical hand up there.
Yeah, yes. rather than an emoji of my hand. So yes, I really that's that I believe that's where the evaluation framework will come in, because it will be where we're able to give real examples of how we've implemented the technology to remove any risk of the wrong advice or bias or hallucinations, etc. So the way that our systems work and the way that the data is presented for the humans involved in the process removes any decision making by the AI. The AI is purely there to package up how the conversation will flow. So the user and our systems are in control of whether or not that would be the right way to package up the response to remove any lack of safety or bias in that. So the AI itself won't know other than the preferred pronoun and preferred name. So Sentai knows I'm Jackie and I'm her or she in the context of the data that's presented for other people. But beyond that, there's no information that's used that we send to the AI for it to create any bias around it, if that makes sense, I hope.
I think, Katie, we have to actually call. That's
Yes,
1 o'clock.
Sadly, we do have to call time on this. I know that there are some questions still in chat, including a very interesting one about supply chains. We will follow up to all of you who have registered with an email with both the slides and the recording, but also answers to those questions which have been missed. If anybody would like a more detailed conversation one-on-one with any of us or about the Tech Pledge, I'm just popping some contact details as well into the chat. But really, that is for me to say thank you so much to our wonderful panel for joining us today. It's been really helpful, and as somebody who only sort of dips in and out of the Tech Pledge side of the Oxford work, I'm only on the care provider side, really helpful for me as well. So thank you very much for that one.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for
Take care.
joining. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.